The Prusa MinTemp error. We're going to fix it today on Grim 3D. Stay tuned. So I've been printing quite a few large shelf brackets on the Prusa, and shelf brackets were forcing the bed to go completely end to end and the x-axis to go clear from stop to stop practically. I wanted a maximum size. I was putting up some 12-inch shelves, and that's not quite 12 inches, but it worked out, and I ended up printing 12 of them. And by the time I got done printing 12 of them, and keep in mind, and my Prusa is not new, I've had it for quite a while, and it's been working pretty good. I did already have a fan error that happened to be broken wires, and so I'll put a card up so you can check out that video if you want to. But now I'm looking at a MinTemp error, which, through a little bit of deductive reasoning and a little bit of troubleshooting, I have determined is a break in the wires up near the INC box. So to let everybody in, and I'm going to show you what I was seeing, and I'm going to show you how I diagnosed that the MinTemp error was a break in the wires up by the INC box.
So I found out the reason why these indiscernible characters show up on the Prusa screen here is because I'm running Octoprint, and once the error runs on the Prusa, the Octoprint's not able to actually place the error on the screen. But I'm going to run a couple of tests. Hopefully this test is going to tell me which thermistor has wires making a bad connection or whatever. So here's the test. So first of all, I'm going to need to reset the printer. And hopefully on this test, after it's reset, I won't get the gobbledygook on the screen, the indiscernible characters. Hopefully I will get an actual error on here, because this time I'm not running through Octoprint or my Raspberry Pi at all. So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to preheat, and I'm just going to run it to PETG temperatures, which doesn't really matter because I'm not going to print anything, but that's where I've been getting my error the most. I'm going to go ahead and wait for this to heat up a little bit. I don't think it needs to heat up a whole lot before you start testing, because it's going to run a MinTemp error when the computer's brain gets a different reading from the thermistor than it believes it should. So anyways, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reach back in the back, and I'm going to mess with the bed cable. Maybe pull the bed forward a little bit, mess with it, push the bed back a little bit, mess with it the whole time, just wiggle it around. Okay, sometimes this can take a minute to figure out exactly what position it needs to be in to create the open circuit. But it could also be the thermistor in the print head. So then maybe I'll mess with this wire a little bit. Oh, right there. Boom, I barely touched that wire, and I got a MinTemp error. Boom. I have a break in the wires of the print head's thermistor right at the top of the control box. So what I guess I'm going to do is then go ahead and replace the thermistor.
So here we are a little bit later, and I have a couple of new thermocouples here. I got these up from online from Philostruder. They had ones that they said were designed specifically for replacing the ones in the Prusa. And mostly I think it just takes a regular thermocouple, anything that will work with an E3 V6 hot end. But the deal with the Prusa ones is that the plug for the INC board is a little bit different, and I think the wire lengths are a little bit different. Now, if you watch my video on the print fan error, you would see that for that I just actually replaced the wires. And the reason why I could get away with that is because the fan is kind of either on or it's off. But these thermocouples are pretty precision. So I didn't really want to just replace the wires on this to take care of it. I wanted something that was already set up and ready to go for the Prusa, the right length wire, the right connector, and I found those stateside at Philostruder. So we're going to go ahead and pull out the old thermocouple and put in this new one right now. So I'm going to try to make sure everybody can see what's going on here, at least a little bit, which means that I can't see real well, but I think we'll get through this. First thing I'm going to do is I kind of want to protect this bed And I actually, anything that falls out of here, I don't want it to go bouncing and go flying off anywhere. So I'm just going to put down that washcloth. I'm going to go ahead and remove the fan right here. So now I've got the part fan off, and I got it kind of tucked out of the way. I don't know that you really have to remove the part fan, but I really wanted people to kind of be able to see what I'm doing a little bit. So I got that out of the way. And I don't think the thermocouple is going to come out of there with this fan on. So let's see if we need to remove that fan. Pull that out. So now I got that hot end fan out of the way. Looks like I need to maybe do some cleaning in there, blowing that out. So then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my flush cutters. I'm going to go ahead and undo the wires by being careful not to clip the wires and just clipping those zip ties underneath there. And I'm going to have to clip the ones on the top as well. And then I'm also going to open up the control box so that I can get at both ends of the wires that go from the control box up to the print head. Now, last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and flip this around in just a second, but right now all I'm going to do is, so my printer has this kind of older style plastic wrap. A lot of these have kind of a mesh loom on them, but this plastic wrap, I'm just going to go ahead and take that off, which you just do by carefully unwrapping it. It just holds your whole gang of wires together and makes your printer nice and neat and keeps the wires from kind of getting a little bit crazy. Which right now we're going to have to do the little bit crazy because we are needing to get these wires completely uncovered so that I can pull the entire thermocouple wire out from end to end. And one thing that kind of irks me, if you watched my other video on the print fan error, I kind of wish that for the print fan and for this thermocouple, I do kind of wish that they'd have used better wire. This is really not fantastic wire. So there we have that. Now we can start working on this end of the thermocouple. Got to get that little grub screw. So there I was able to pull the front of it out. This is the actual thermistor, and then there's some heat rated wire right here, and then it goes all the way back here, goes through the opening and plugs into the INC board. Let's see if I can get this turned. So I hope everybody can see in there. So this is the thermistor wire that I've been messing with, and it's kind of messed up here a little bit as it goes into the INC board. I have another zip tie to carefully clip right there. And then this whole mess is pretty much open and freewheeling. So I'm going to follow the thermistor wires. Dun, 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 dun. Following. And they plug into the INC board right there. So I'm going to put a pinch on it, pull those out before I lose that location. I'm going to take my made for Prusa Mark III replacement and plug that right back in where it was. And now start trying to get these wires untangled a little bit. It does look like in my installation, which was a long time ago. If you want to see that video, I'll put a card up, but it does look like this cable is twisted, has another cable going through it. So I'll just take my flush cutters and cut it free because I am done with this. I will not try to be replacing wires on this or reusing this because, like I said before, the wire resistance and length is probably pretty specific to the actual thermistor that's on there and the way that it actually works with the Prusa. So this is just garbage. Now I am going to make sure that my nylon wire/cable helper is in the right place. I really want it to try to stay in there as good as it can. So while I'm messing with these wires, it's not going to want to. So I'm going to try to put a couple of rounds of electrical tape on the end to give it a little extra thickness. If you're careful, you can get the electrical tape in there. And this is just temporary. It's just want to make sure that this doesn't pull out. There we go. See, now it's not pulling out, which is fantastic. And then I am going to take the other end of my new thermistor and install it in the hot end. I'm going to make sure that it is not twisted in any way, that the wire will go where it needs to go and lay flat and play nice with the others. So let me turn this back around and we'll get to installing it in the front. So here we are once again in the front. I'm going to pretty much do the same that I did before in reverse order. I'm going to feed the new thermistor into the side of the heat block. At Prusa, it says to make sure that it is evenly distributed in the heat block, so I can feel it on my finger a little bit. I'm going to try to hold it there, grab my Allen wrench for the grub screw, and you don't need a whole lot on the grub screw. I just want to put it in so that it's tight enough that it doesn't slide. If you over tighten this, you will ruin it. You will crush the little thermistor cartridge, and chances are it will never work again and you'll have to replace it a second time. So with binding these wires up again, I'm going to start on the front end here. Put the thermistor wire back where the old one was, so it's up out of the way. And I'm just going to go ahead and put on my zip ties and rebundle this up. So stay tuned. Now with all that playing around, you can see why I didn't want the nylon helper to come out of there, which is why I put that little piece of tape on it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bundle these up a little bit, and then as they go down in there, I'm going to manipulate this down in there a little bit so that in the end the case for the board can clamp onto it a little bit to help out my wires on that end not get so damaged from the back and forth. You'll also notice that I started at this end because all of the wires are not the same length, and in the end I want them all to just tuck inside this board so they're properly in there. One thing I want to do before I close the box is I want to put a zip tie on those wires. Almost forgot. So there's a zip tie that goes right here. We've manipulated it down in there as far as we can get this plastic covering to go, and then we can put this zip tie on it to help hold on to the plastic, because this plastic sheathing is kind of my strain relief on those wires to keep them from bending too much in the exact same spot every time. So now I'm ready to close it up. Make sure all my wires are folded up in there just fine and nothing's getting pinched in any of the hinges. And then I will close this up. And now I'm going to go ahead and put together my hot end. So the first thing I'm going to do with my hot ends, I'm going to take this little brush. This is just a little brush that I got Harbor Freight. I'm going to get some of that dust and dirt out of there. If I had a can of spray air, I would hit it with that and spray it out the back. Go ahead and get this as clean as I can. The better airflow you get through here, the better your chances of not getting heat creep are. So you're trying to avoid some heat creep. So once I've got that clean, I'm going to go ahead and hit my Noctua fan with the same brush very carefully. Last thing I want to do is have to buy another Noctua fan. This one's working fine. No complaints at this point. But no reason to ruin it being too aggressive with the brush. Just trying to knock that dust off that builds up over time. Those 12 shelf brackets that I told you about, each one of those shelf brackets was probably a 12-hour print. So this printer was printing straight for 6 days from one end stop to the other. So yeah, I worked it pretty hard. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back in there, grab my screws, get those back where they go. It's always a good idea when you're putting screws into plastic to back them off first until you feel that little click. It means the threads lined up with where the threads were before, so you're not always cutting brand new threads. Eventually, cutting brand new threads every time will make it so that you don't have enough space for threads and you get to reprint the part that you're sinking the screw into. So go ahead and back it off a little bit. Won't feel that click. There we go. And we can go forwards nice and easy. Not cutting new threads, putting the screw back into the same threads that were already cut. I also like to get all of them in so it's kind of loose, loosey-goosey, and then go around and tighten them to their final tightness after they're all in. Saves you a lot of time having to pull them back out so that the screw holes align properly, in my experience anyways. One last little torque check. I'm not putting a whole lot of torque on them, just a little bit, but I want them to be at least similar. There we go, that's that fan, and now we are going to put on this part fan shroud. Pretty simple, it's just one screw, back that up. Oh, so we feel the click, so we're not cutting brand new threads every time. Because this only has one screw, I like to make sure, and it's twisting kind of the wrong way for tightening, I like to make sure that I hold that up in there nice and tight so that I get this as flat as possible on the bottom so nothing hangs below the nozzle. Now I can bring back my part fan, set that right in there. It's kind of a tight fit. And put in my last screw. Back it up until it clicks. And there you have it. There's one last step to making this happen, being all done. But I got to plug the printer back in, so we're going back over, putting the printer back in its home. So I got the Prusa Diffusa back where it belongs, back in its home. It's all plugged in. It's all ready to go. I've got the Pi, which by the way is underneath here, is all set up. However, there's one more thing that needs to be done. Anytime you change anything to do with the hot end, the nozzle, or any of that kind of stuff, even put a sock on it, anytime you deal with the hot end or anything that creates heat, you need to finish that up by doing a PID tune, which on the Prusa is not very difficult. So I want a PID tune at the temperature that I'm going to calibration. I'm going to go down to the PID calibration, and I'm going to set my temperature for 250 because this printer almost always prints PETG, and you want a PID tune at a temperature that is pretty normal for what you use the printer for. So then I just hit go, and it's going to go ahead and heat up, and it's going to take care of it. It's going to take a while. Well, that's it for this episode of Grim 3D. We went through a couple of things. We removed the thermistor, we replaced the thermistor, we reset all the wires in the back into the INC board and into the control box. And you also saw a quick PID tune, which is kind of a no-brainer on a Prusa. So that's all good information. A couple of thoughts about this, though. My first thought is this is the second repair I've had to do on this Prusa. Now I've had it for a while, probably 3 years. So I'm really happy that Prusa has a printer that prints as well as it does right out of the box. That's fantastic. But in 3 years I've had this printer, I've had to do 2 repairs like this now. This one was a MinTemp error, but the first one was a fan error. Both broken wires, both from the same situation. Those wires in the back just move back and forth so much when it's printing that how could they not break? Now, I don't know if this is a design flaw and something Prusa should work on, or if they just need to use better wires. There's silicone, high flexibility wires out there that could have easily been put in this situation and could have created a longer life on those wires, and that printer could have more uptime. If you have a Prusa, you probably are eventually going to have these same types of errors. The interesting thing is the very first printer I bought was my Monoprice Maker Select Plus. Its wires run in a hard clip all the way up to the top of the gantry, and then there's literally one ribbon that comes down from the very top center of the gantry down to the print head. So the farthest those wires can move is literally 4 inches in either direction from them just being relaxed in the middle. I have never had a wire go bad on the Maker Select. It's been running just as hard as the Prusa. It's been running for at least 6 months to a year longer, probably closer to a year, and I have not had to replace one single wire from the control board to the print head because of stress. So kind of a design flaw, but I still gotta say, if you want a printer that prints straight out of the box and prints beautifully, the Prusa is the way to go. I really haven't done much updates on that at all, except add my Octoprint and add a camera. Like literally, that's about all I've done. It prints fantastic every single time. And it's my printer that I use for PETG, and I just get wonderful results from it. So if you've got any questions or comments, please leave those down below. Just remember to stay civil. Please subscribe. I'd really like to have some subscribers and make this channel the best it can be. Smash that like button. ring the bell. Let's play games with the algorithm. We'll see you out there.